In 2005, when I just started playing cricket, my father was like, "Are you crazy? Why don't you play tennis? Why don't you be like Sania Mirza?" Here I am today talking to the legend who's inspired an entire generation of women athletes. Hello and welcome to the special episode of Home of Heroes. I've got Sania Mirza with me. Didi, I'm very tense. Didi, go.
You're actually sweating?
Yeah.
You've been sweating since last night.
Yeah, like I'm very
But why?
See, you've done this many a times.
We had chai together today. You spoke rubbish to me in the afternoon already. What can be worse, tell me?
You know, eventually in front of camera, I have to be like little poised like you, right? So I'm just have to match that vibe.
You need 6 more years and you'll be, you know, the real facade that I do.
First of all, I'd welcome you to Home of Heroes. Let's start from the beginning. What is your earliest tennis memory?
My earliest tennis memory is when I was 6 years old and I used to go and play, I used to go for swimming every day in my summer holidays. And my first memory is when my mom went to the tennis court and told the coach that I want her to play tennis. And I was just above the net, I think. I was very small. And he refused. And he said no. And he said, she's too small. I've never had a young girl like this. Imagine 30 years ago, it was unheard of for a 6-year-old girl to play tennis in Hyderabad. So my mom had to fight with him. Actually had an argument with him and said, this is my daughter. I want her to play. What is your problem? So that is actually my earliest memory of tennis. And then finally, I took a huge racket, I remember. It was like so big. It was like a full-size racket. I connected ball to racket straight away. And that was my first memory of tennis. And after that, I just remember falling in love with the game.
Your dad had an immense influence on your career from an early age. Do you remember any incident that made him go like, oh, well, we've got this in the family, she's got the talent?
No, but I honestly speaking, and I know I shouldn't say this to you, but at that point of time, if I was a boy, I would probably be playing cricket.
Yeah.
And I know you being a girl playing cricket was so different, right?
Yeah.
Like, and just playing sport was different. And honestly, I think because I was a girl, they were like, nay, I don't think cricket is for girls. That mentality that was there and is still there in many households. And unfortunately or fortunately, they had that mentality, not mentality, but that's the way things were back then, 30 years ago, you know.
I was told, like, why don't you play tennis?
Yeah, exactly. So, but if I was a guy, for sure, I would be playing cricket. There was no, I think, question about that because we have a lot of cricket in our family. My dad played cricket. My uncle played Ranji. My dad's uncle was the captain of the Indian cricket team. So, we had a lot of cricket. And now, obviously, our life went on and cricket kept adding to our family. So, I was the first girl from our family to play sport.
Wow.
Or even pursue playing a sport. And my dad, actually both of them, I shouldn't say just my dad, it was actually my mom who pursued it before my dad. And both of them together sort of were way ahead of their times at that point. You know, I was very fortunate to have those kind of parents who were like, it doesn't really matter what you guys think, like our child is going to play a sport regardless of what gender she is. And but there was not really any one day that we sat down and were like, okay, fine, from today we will be a professional tennis player. That never happened. Kind of was a process. Like you know, when I was 8, I went and played my first tournament, like a state tournament, and we celebrated every win the same way, and we were proud of it. You know, I remember having memories of my parents being keeping albums and albums of the articles that used to come. You know, at that time there was newspaper, no social media.
Yeah.
Like normal people, we used to open the newspaper and read it, and till today we have those albums. You know, so. It was a very, very natural progression into me becoming a professional athlete. I don't think we in our wildest dreams thought that it will reach a level that it did, to be very honest, because we were just doing it for the love of the sport, and because, you know, my parents wanted their child to play a sport, and I loved the sport.
It's absolutely incredible. I'm already getting goosebumps talking to you. Mir, did you have a role model growing up?
Yeah, I mean, I had a role model in Steffi Graf, because that was the only person. I mean, there was no really woman athlete in our country outside of PT Usha that we could look up to growing up.
Yep.
And that was probably the only household name that was sort of there in the subcontinent, where everybody knew, acha, if you want to be an athlete, a woman, you can be like PT Usha. And nobody really knew what PT Usha looked like, right? Because like I said, there was no media and social media, and electronic media wasn't so big at that point. So you just had this image of her that, acha, there's this person who's a, you know, a very big star and a very big athlete and an incredible achiever.
Yeah.
It was only many years later that I actually knew what PT Usha looked like. So I had to find heroes outside of our country. And for me, I always looked up to Steffi, and I wanted to play a forehand like her. And many years later, you know, it was a huge compliment. People used to tell me, oh, your forehand's a lot like Steffi Graf. So that's who I tried to emulate, and that's who I kind of tried to follow in my journey.
Like what inspired you the most during that period, when there was obviously no visual imagination of how tennis would be?
Honestly, like I said, because we were not doing it for the fame or for the money or for things that becoming a public figure brings you.
Yeah.
We were doing it step by step. We were just doing it because we love to play. I love to win. I love to compete. It was very simple, you know. It was not so complicated that, you know, and I knew I was much better for my age, because I stopped playing under 18s when I was 13 years old. Yeah. So I stopped playing under 16s when I was 12 years old, because I was winning already. Yeah. So it was that journey kind of just kept going. So the inspiration actually came from within when I would win. And I'd be like, oh, let me see if I can push the bar a little bit more, you know. And as athletes, we love pushing the bar, right? Like, and that's why sometimes we get injured, because we don't actually know where to stop. I found the inspiration from within. I found the inspiration from my parents, because honestly, they believed in me when nobody else did. You know, people thought that it was a joke that we even thought that we wanted to play Wimbledon one day.
Yeah.
They really thought we were crazy. And why should they not think? Nobody had done it before. So why did they have to think we were that one girl who was going to do it from this country of 1.3 billion people? At that point, it was probably 1 billion.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so it was just finding that motivation and inspiration, and honestly enjoying every moment, like going along.
I think, I mean, we kind of share a similar thing when it comes to parents being there and believing that your child can do whatever people doesn't believe. Because when I come from a very small city, rather a town, and people said, like, cricket, what is she even going to do playing cricket? And
which is why I always say that in this side of the world, you know, not just in India, the entire subcontinent, you know, there are so many challenges that as women or young girls that we face on a daily basis outside of the actual sport that we play. Yeah. Because we're constantly battling the social and cultural norms that are meant to be for girls and women, that have been outlined by a society that we live in. And unfortunately or fortunately, we come from that background. So when somebody like you or somebody like me says, no, that is not what the outline is, I don't believe in this outline, then like I was labeled a rebel. Yes. When I was not at all, actually. Yeah. I was actually, I mean, I still live with my parents, you know, like, you know, I mean, I was not at all a rebel. Yeah. It was just that I didn't think that cooking was the way I wanted to go about my life. I thought that playing tennis was the way to go, and it's okay. So I think that that is why I say that when a woman from this side of the world achieves something in sport, but also achieves something that's outside of the box, she deserves a lot more credit than a male does. And that's not because she's better. It's because the kind of challenges that we face from the time that at a young age, coming from, oh, how she's going to become dark and nobody is going to marry her, how is she going to go and wear shorts and go and play with boys. Every day we're fighting that battle of trying to prove that it's okay that we can do that. That is why they deserve so much more credit.
You've been a known name since you were a teenager? When did it strike you that you're not going to have a normal life?
I think when I won Junior Wimbledon and I came back, I really think like when I came back, I remember I was still in school. I was in 11th or 12th. Yeah, I was in 11th or 12th. And I remember coming back and the entire, like there was like 500 schoolgirls that had come. There was media. There was, I don't know who all were there. There was thousands of people at the airport to receive me. And then we had gone in this open top bus. Yep. Like, I'm really not sure why till today, but we had done that. And it was 20 years ago, you know. And I think that was the moment when I realized that, you know, I think my life's going to be different and it's not going to be the same. You know, going to a restaurant was never the same after that. Going to, yeah, it just never was.
I mean, I've experienced this now for the last few days. Hanging out with you, it's not the same. No. I sometimes feel like, I know, I need to like push off and say, okay, clear the way.
No, you know, I feel very grateful also. Like, I don't mean to sound like ungrateful because I feel like, you know, people always think that the answer to happiness is fame and money. It really isn't. But the fact is that I am very grateful for the journey I've had, and we all like to be recognized for our work and for what we do. But we also are human beings, and we also like to, you know, if we're sitting somewhere like we have